Welcome, friends. Again, we are in another session of Soaring Through Chaos. And I'm always looking for people to talk to about the challenges we all face in our life. Yes, we are going through the second wave of the pandemic right now. And this is one of the challenges that we as a community of human beings, a community of living beings, are facing all over the planet. At the same time, it is widely believed by scientists as well as spiritual people that difficulties, challenges, discomfort is when the greatest growth can happen. That if we are able to overcome these challenges, this is where our growth will be. And one of the people I met during these kinds of discussions is in front of me now. His name is Karan Singh Sidhu. Kaise ho? How are you, sir?
I'm fine, ji. आप कैसे हैं? I'm right now speaking to you from Chandigarh.
And Karan became my friend because his love for writing and poetry. He shares every day on social media. I loved his alliterations. I loved his playing with words and all that. And we had no clue about our professions, but we became friends as human beings because of the simplicity with which he shares every single day on different social media. And then later, many years later actually, when my friend lost his passport and visa, when he lost everything in America, then I sent out a message on social media saying, who can help him get back, a temporary passport and visa? And Karan Virji helped me do that. That's when, for the first time, I realized he's a very high-ranking Indian Administrative Service officer in Punjab, and that's when my admiration for him went up. His humility, his simplicity. So, sir, tell us a little bit about you and how did you end up in civil service?
So as you've rightly put the tag, I belong to the Indian Administrative Service of the 1984 batch. That means I have been in service since 21st of August 1984. And I belong to the Punjab Cadre. So those of you who are familiar with the structure of the Indian Administrative Service would know that generally you are allocated to a particular state cadre where you normally serve, but you have the option of going over to the Government of India and being a joint secretary or an additional secretary or even a secretary in some of the central ministries. I've done that still too. But you get into the service after an All India competitive examination, followed by 2 years of training, and then you get your first posting, and then generally you serve in the cadre. So to put things in perspective, if I joined in 1984, I have put in almost 36 years of service. I still have one more year of service to go because I got into service straight out of college. Now, how I got in, that's a little story, but it'll take me 2-3 minutes to tell you, and I would love to share it with you. My father belonged to the State Civil Service, or PCS as it is called, Punjab Civil Service, or the Provincial Civil Services elsewhere. And he unfortunately passed away at a very young age of 40, and I and my sister were respectively 10 and 11 years old. And my mother, she single-handedly brought us up. Touch wood, she's still alive and she's with us, and it's all her blessing. So while I was inclined towards engineering and towards mathematics and physics, so as a normal corollary, I picked up my electronics and telecommunication degree from Patiala, where I belong to for all practical purposes. It is now deemed a university by the name of Upper University, but then was a college of the local Punjabi University, Patiala. So I picked up my electronics and telecommunication, BE or BS or BTech, whatever you may call it. And I was interested in pursuing masters, for which I had taken the entrance examination, and I got admitted to IIT Delhi for my master. But somewhere down the line, there was this wish to take the civil services examination, not really to hold the family tradition, but everyone was saying that if you are academically inclined and good in studies, and you have gone to one of the best schools in the region, which is the Yadavendra Public School, founded by the erstwhile royal family of Patiala. In fact, Maharaja Yadavendra Singh is the father of the current Punjab Chief Minister, Captain Amrinder Singh. So we had a good command over English and also declamation, debate, quiz competitions, and knowledge. So I had also filled in the application forms for the civil service examination, which is a national examination. So once I went to IIT Delhi, within a couple of days, I did realize that, in life there comes a spot where you have to take decisions. So there was a kind of a Y type of fork in front of me. Either I should forget about the civil services and get into full-time computer science and research and then kind of head abroad, or I will have to put the MTech onto the back burner, basically return to my hometown, and my college was more than happy to offer me a teaching job. And that is exactly what I did. One fine day, within a week of my reporting at IIT Delhi, I was back to the Thapar Institute, Patiala, to teach and simultaneously take the examination. So I taught for 2 semesters, simultaneously took the examination, and with the grace of God, in the very first attempt, I not only cleared, but also got an All India rank 2, which in
Wow.
a competitive environment got me the home cadre of Punjab. And that's how I started my journey into the IAS from the 21st of August, 1984. And you will see that 1984 was a disturbed year. Our results came towards the end of May. The very unfortunate Blue Star operation happened in the first week of June. The entire Punjab was under curfew. We joined service in Mussoorie in August, and then 31st October 84, Mrs. Gandhi's assassination. So throughout we had a kind of a troubled environment in which we had begun our service. And then of course, as one got the various field postings, I'll talk a little bit about if you have any questions to ask. Those were the days of terrorism and militancy, and field postings were exceedingly tough. And but with the grace of God, one has navigated and gone through the service with its ups and downs, with its tensions. And right now, I am the Special Chief Secretary to the Government of Punjab, but my full-time job is now being the Director General of the Punjab State Institute of Public Administration, which is to train not only the in-service officers of Punjab government, long-term, short-term courses, also the new recruits of Punjab Cadre IAS, the state civil services. And now as a regional center, we have also been recognized to impart training to the newly recruited Government of India officers, because there are any number of statutes like the Right to Information Act, sexual harassment in the workplace, and so on, which have an all India character, and all officers, whether belonging to the central government or the state government, are supposed to be acquainted with. So I am very happy. I have almost a year to go till 31st July next year. And I'm trying my best to mentor youngsters within the service, outside the service, those who want to take not only civil service examination in terms of talks on motivation, leaderships, and so on. So I think I'm happy with myself. My job is something which chimes with my internal frequency, resonates very well. And that is what the journey has been like.
When I look at you, Karan VG, it's not a job at all for you. It's your passion, it's your way of life. And what I really admire about you is that even like until a couple of weeks ago, you were responsible for COVID-19 for the state of Punjab, right? You were the person in charge, Chandigarh and all that. And with all that going on, to be able to connect with and even respond to thousands of people who may be approaching you using social media is a miracle. So yeah, on one hand, you're doing top down, taking care of entire, what is the population of Punjab now? We're talking about tens of millions of people, isn't it?
Little less than 3 crores. So
That's 30
it's
million people.
30 million, little less than 30 million,
Yeah,
28, more like.
so essentially you were responsible for the well-being of
That's right.
about, around
That's
30
right.
million people in the state of Punjab on one hand, then you're also responsible for the training of the officers and executives and civil servants who will be serving the state of Punjab and more, national level as well. And with your stories, anecdotes about life, you're connecting with the masses. And I'm one of them. I was responding to you from Mexico at the time, and now from Baroda,
That's right.
Gujarat. How do you manage that? How do you manage to be able to at so many levels and irrespective of power, money, where they're coming from, you just connect with people? How do you do that?
You see, when this COVID thing happened, I was what in Punjab they call the Financial Commissioner of Revenue, which means you are in charge of the district collectors and the divisional commissioners. So the general administration of the state is technically under the Financial Commissioner of Revenue, and the Department of Disaster Management, which may be placed with different departments in different states. It will be with the Home Department in some places. But the Disaster Management Department as such was with our Revenue Department. So in a way, it became my responsibility not only to receive funds from Government of India, to disperse them, to conduct meetings. And this was a scenario which was unfolding. I mean, there was no blueprint. There was no standard operating procedure because this was an unprecedented situation. So even Government of India was in the process of issuing instructions. So my immediate response, of course, was that it is something which you cannot departmentalize or compartmentalize. You have to take all the departments along with. Of course, the health department had to be at the forefront, but in terms of testing and tracing of contacts, the revenue agency, the field agencies, right from the village level Patwari to a Tahsildar to a sub-divisional magistrate to the deputy commissioner or the collector, they were involved, and we were kind of interacting with them at every level, trying to sort out the situation. And of course, the police department, in terms of imposing the curfew, assisting the civil administration, and also in terms of the social outreach, in terms of distributing the langar and so on. So it was a challenge. And the whole idea was that while we were doing our duty, I personally thought that there were two other important aspects which had to be taken care of. That on social media, if there are any distress calls, someone senior enough should be able to, divert them or to transfer them to the appropriate level. It could be something as simple as you not getting dry rations, or Jammu and Kashmir girl students being stranded in Amritsar, or students from Northeast being in Ropar who wanted to go home. So that was one. The other was in terms of disseminating of the information, because when the pandemic started originally, having one case in a city was causing more alarm than perhaps 100 cases that you may have today. So people were interested to know who's getting infected, what the administration is doing, is he close enough to us? So it was a delicate balance between, piercing the personal privacy of the person who was infected, at the same time giving enough information to the people so that they could be careful enough, so that if anyone in their vicinity was infected, they could take the precaution. So Punjab, and of course, I must say that the Punjab Chief Minister, Captain Amrinder Singh, the Fauji officer that he led from the front, and we were ahead of the curve. We had almost 70,000 NRIs in Punjab at the time when the COVID broke.
Wow.
So each one of them had to be traced, tested, quarantined. And I'm happy to say that we did not have a single infected case from the NRIs who were in Punjab. Subsequently, there were cases where people came from abroad, and they went about, and maybe they brought infection from abroad or caught it locally. So there were various challenges. Then the Tablighi people came into Punjab. That created a spike. Then our own Sikh pilgrims who were stranded in Nanded in spite of the precautions when we brought them, they were infected. And the students preparing for the IT examinations in Kota, they had to be brought. And then, of course, as the situation developed, you had this whole scenario of Shramik trains being arranged with Government of India to take the labor back to their home state. So those were specific trains. And all of this would have been pretty simple, but for the fact that in a COVID scenario, the type of social distancing, which you have to maintain, the other precautions, and of course, keeping the team motivated. So you'll see in some of the cases in early on where persons unfortunately died of COVID, their immediate family members were not willing to cremate their own father, their own mother. So it was left to our revenue officers and the patawaris who actually did that job with, of course, requisite precautions. But that speaks of the dedication and their motivation, and as to how Punjab literally has trudged along. And right now, things are under control. There is no paranoia, but definitely we are not in a position where we can say that we can rest on our past laurels, or it's business as usual. Caution is the byline and the buzzword, but there is no paranoia. If you're having about 200, 250, 300 cases daily, and the recovery period is 14 days, let us say, on an average. So even if you take 300, about 400 people in isolation wards at any given time is something which Punjab can very easily handle. And in the meantime, of course, the medical facilities have been tremendously augmented, and the private sector, both on the charitable and on the commercial side, have been very cooperative. And therefore, I am very confident that this contagion, which of course is not just confined to Punjab, is confined to the whole of the world, we'll be able to contain it. But the challenges are the slowing down of the economy, the government revenues falling down if the economic wheel is not churning around. So we are trying to work very hard around that, and of course in collaboration with the Government of India, because most of the income of the state is derived from the goods and services tax, which is shared 50-50 between Government of India and the respective states, and stamp duty and liquor excise. So unless there is purchase and sale of goods, services, immovable property, so the state revenues would not be there. The objective of this talk is not get into how we are going to face these fiscal challenges, but all that I want to underscore is that both the political leadership and the bureaucracy, as well as the industrial associations, as well as the labor unions, as well as the teachers, students, online learning, everyone is doing and contributing their might as an MITE, or contributing their bit to make sure that this wheel of economy is turning and churning, and we are not losing this valuable time. If normal processes are not there, let's have e-learning. If we can't go to a shop to buy something, let the e-commerce flourish. So as you said, it reminds me of the Shakespearean quote. He says, "Sweet are the uses of adversity. Like a toad ugly and venomous, wears yet a jewel in its crown." So this adversity also has some positive sides and effects. And as you are a spiritual man, and in Mahabharata they say that you put gold into raging fire to purify it, the impurities get out. So this is the true test of man's capabilities, of his character, and also stretches the limits. I mean, you sometimes don't really realize the type of storehouse of energy which you have, and it is during crisis that it comes out. And it was perhaps Winston Churchill who said something to this effect, that an adversity or a calamity is too valuable an opportunity to be wasted. So things like upgrading our health infrastructure, which would have been on back burner, and so on, trying to tighten the state finances, which would have been business as usual. In the case now that there is an emergency, a calamity, so we've been able to tackle those issues and to take the bull by the horn, as it were.
It's so amazing, Karan Biji. This is the first time we're talking about macroeconomics, and how the state and the nation is being handled. Uh, there are many critics and there are very few people who appreciate the hard work that all of you are doing. And I want to personally thank you on behalf of millions of people around the world. What we don't realize is how much coordination, how much dealing with chaos, how many unprecedented things are happening, unexpected, no standard operating procedure, nothing. And dynamically, things have to be shifted. There are people stranded literally around the world, students studying in England and in Africa, wanting to get back to home to take care of aging parents and people with infections. It is really amazing. Uh, but what I find
And
even more
for instance,
amazing,
also, I mean, to take care
your
of
own
people
son,
coming
yes,
coming from abroad. I mean, there was a large number of NRI population. I mean, basically Punjabi people, but holding Canadian, American, UK passports, and their countries were, arranging special flights for them, but then getting them in a state of curfew from their village to the airport and so on, getting them tested before they board. And on the other hand, while you may have the Vande Mataram flights coming back, where do they land? How do you quarantine? Are you going to quarantine in Delhi, or are you going to quarantine here? So it is a huge logistical operation. But normally, it could have been handled as an administrative, as a managerial exercise. But once you have this whole paradigm of COVID, a highly infectious and potentially deadly disease, then in that scenario handling, that is what really made the task much more difficult. And that is what really was the challenging part of it.
and I was definitely one of the beneficiaries of the process. As you know, I came back from Cuernavaca to Mexico City, and because I had gone there for 3 weeks, I do these leadership trainings. I ended up being there for 3 months, and I was very patient because both California was in a shelter-in-place equivalent of lockdown, and the whole nation, India, was in lockdown, and I had to choose which way do I go when it opens up. But my wife was here serving, and then she was not feeling well, so I came back to India.
And
What
that
was
is one
amazing?
of the lessons from Mahabharata, which you, I'm sure, would have studied, is that you have to balance between passion and patience. So, like the
Yes.
Pandavas, when they were in the Banvas and in forest dwelling, banished for 12 years, you had to be patient. But when you're fighting for your right, for a just cause, then there has to be passion. So I think Mary Angelou, the Black American author who died almost close to 100 a few years ago, she said, it's about proper balance of passion and patience. And I think your own stint in Mexico amply demonstrated that.
Well, there was no choice, exactly like you're saying. And but what was amazing was how well the whole process was handled at every stage. In fact, we always talk about India being a very bureaucratic place. The bureaucracy was cut down by like 99%. There was a little bit required to make sure that each person coming back to India had the right papers and that they were not infected and that they're taken enough precautions to not only take care of themselves but not to infect others. But beyond that, there was zero bureaucracy. Even when I landed in Delhi, again, they had to ensure that every single person, at least the heat, the temperature, make sure, interview them, make sure that they are doing fine. The places where they came from were safe. If they need to be quarantined in New Delhi or not, all the logistics. And I can see these nodal officers doing it on the fly. I could see their brilliance and their dedication to service. Often we always talk, the common people, including me, sometimes look at, oh, these IAS officers, all that they do is some kind of jugglery. No, I could see them in operation and their dedication to doing that. There are officers right now taking phone calls throughout the night because it is necessary. People have cell phones on. And my brother-in-law just came back from India, and he had to call at 1 p.m., 1 a.m. early morning to a nodal officer here to inform that he's back. What are the quarantine rules? The guy gets up from sleep and responds. This is the level of dedication which is admirable. And I just want to thank everybody. Like we thank the doctors who are taking care and the nurses and the police officers. There are these people who are administering or taking care of the country as their own like the way they're taking care of their homes with no expectations, nothing, but because it's their duty and it's their, not only, it's not a privilege, but it's really a duty to take care. Amazing work. And somebody like you has not slowed down at all in terms of sharing. You're sharing from your life, you're sharing your little cues, you're sharing your poetry. Tell us a little bit about how you got into sharing on social media on a daily basis, and what does it mean to you? It's definitely not contributing to your professional, what I mean, image, or it's not like you're going to make more money. What makes you share, and how do you share?
I think every human being has the innate, potential desire to express himself, and also our freedom of speech and expression and so on and so forth are also, they essentially flow out of a person trying to express. Someone would like to write a poetry, someone would like to like a drama, some would like to maintain a kind of a personal diary and so on. So one thing which I realized early on was that these ideas which come and go in a flash, unless you really record it, either you are, recording voice clips or you're putting manually somewhere, they could, vanish. And if you have an idea in the middle of the night, it's quite clear. I think I should be able to remember in the morning. By morning, it could have not only evaporated, but, literally gone into nothing, and no amount of thinking you would be able to resurrect it. So it was in that sense that I started with these one-liners and so on. And I also realized that people don't have the patience to go through long stories. They may click on like and go ahead, but if you have something interesting to tell, it should be in a line or two, and there has to be an element of wit and wisdom. I mean, unless there is that little extra in your little quote. And I would always, try to, before I post, I, highlight, right click, Google search, so that this may not be, something which someone might have said earlier, because originality is something which I pride myself in when I put these posts. And there are cases, 2 cases out of 100 where what I'm thinking now was actually said in 18th century or almost the same thing. So there either you acknowledge the inspiration or whatever. So it is in that sense. And I think, as you said, professionally and in terms of job profile, in terms of pecuniary benefits, it's adding nothing. You're fine. But I think even if there are 100, 1,000, 5,000 people who benefit out of that, they feel that there is something of value. And I think that is what is important, because as you said, it is professionally, quote unquote, not important. So it is not about an official tag. These are my personal accounts. And when I was dealing with COVID, I had made a declaration that, I'm temporarily converting my personal account into this official account. And therefore, I was able to serve that. So what was essentially a private platform was put to official use in COVID. But I think this is basically to share your 2 bits, and whatever you share should kind of impel people to think. Even if they smile, they should be able to smile and say, okay, there are 2 nuances, this way or that way. And even if 1person, 2 persons are able to do, and in some cases, if it is helping them to resolve their own dilemmas, because ultimately that is what life is about, taking decisions and agonizing decisions where 2 things seem to be equally right or equally wrong, and you have a narrow window of opportunity in which to take a decision. So if by any chance, however remote, this is helping those friends, I think I would have added to my positive karmic credits, so to say. So that really is in fact, sometimes my own sons would say that, Dad, your too much activity might show that you are, actually doing nothing on the official job. I said, my superiors would say that if anything is pending on the official side, I'm well at on my official things. And therefore, in my spare time, I'm able to put this in, it should not cause any resentment to anyone.
This is so special to hear that because I remember when I was even a small time entrepreneur running a small company, I'd be working 24 by 7. And to be able to manage and do the work effectively, efficiently, and have a life apart from the primary work is necessary to sharpen the saw, to really have sanity even. Now I study more neuroscience and psychology, but the reality is keeping our sanity, keeping our well-being and the family's well-being, being with friends is necessary. We cannot be just we cannot be just man machines working round the clock.
Very true.
Do you have
Very,
something to
very.
say about that? How can people balance their lives and contribute to society and be there for family, friends? How do you do that juggling, and how can people do it?
I think it's all about a balance. And these days, it is almost fashionable to talk in terms of work-life balance. But I think if you see it on a universal scale where you got a sun and the planets going around and everything working in perfect harmony, there's a balance. So that balance, in Urdu, the word is tawazun. So it's a beautiful word. It is not just the physical balance. It is also a sense of proportion. So I think that is what is required. And that is what also I think in terms of some of the shlokas of Gita are there, the Holy Bhagavad Gita, that you have to do your karma. When you're doing something, you're totally focused onto that. And then when that task has been completed, then you cannot be in dilemmas whether I did right or wrong, or still thinking. If you are at home, you can switch off. Now, this switching off and switching on takes a bit of time, but you have to put in conscious effort. And at the end of the day, it does work. And if you overextend yourself, let us be very clear that no one has more than 24 hours a day. Let us say you're a superhuman being and you're working 24 hours a day for whatever your mission is, your business, your startup, your spiritual pursuit, painting that you're making, a work of art or a magnum opus or whatever. You can't work for more than 24 hours in theory. So in doing so, you would spoil your health, your mental well-being, your family relationships, and so on. So therefore, if you have to be a Karam yogi who is doing his householder's duties as well as his profession, as well as he's giving back to the world, his people, to the universe, then that sense of proportion has to be there. And again, patience and passion equally balanced in the sense of proportion. Once you have that, then I think, and this is not something that you put it on autopilot, it will go automatically. It's something, a decision you have to take literally, not only daily, but minute to minute basis. And that is what an aware being is all about. You are aware. There are times when you have to work 18 hours a day, no doubt about it. And there are days when you say that today I'm going to laze about and I'm not going to for that, marriage function, also very important, I'm going to send a shagan. So you need to maintain that balance, and that balance in life, ultimately, people also realize that, here is a person, he's well-meaning. If he's not been able to attend an important social engagement, it is not because he's doing it from a state of arrogance or ego, or that he's too busy. They will appreciate. And ultimately, if you are happy with it, and if what you're doing resonates with your internal frequency, you would be at peace with the universe, and the highs and lows of the life, you'll be filtered out and you'll be equanimous, and what we call as Sahajavastha in Sikh philosophy, you would be equanimous.
Oh, Sahajavastha or Upeksha, or what is it called? Sadasad Vivek Buddhi, or just
Absolutely.
yin yang, balancing the drives and the passions, and amazing. And what I like is that you're bringing it down to day-to-day work. How about the pandemic? So many people, this is just about the worst I have seen in my lifetime, as a global crisis, at least for a short time over the last 4 months. A lot of people seem to be postponing their lives. In other words, they're saying, once the pandemic is over, then I will enjoy. Then I will go to school. Then I will work for something that I enjoy, but right now to struggle. Is it possible to
No, I
see
think
this? This is
if
not, yeah.
you have that type of protection, that can be in a different way also. Let me complete my engineering degree, then I'll do this. Let me complete my this project, then I'll do this. Some things you cannot procrastinate. Rather, you should, as to refer to that quote again, sweet are the use of adversity. Now, if you have some time in your hand, why don't you learn a new language, a new skill? Why don't you record some videos which you think about stuff you thought you would like to share and you never had the time? So, all right, there are things which have to be postponed, for instance, international travel and so on. But I think how many international conferences could a person have attended in 1 year? Now, thanks to COVID, through Zoom meetings and so on and so forth, I think the number of international talks and conferences that I've personally participated in, may not have spoken, but got the benefit of the wisdom of some of the most scholarly people in their respective fields. That is amazing. So I think we should see this as an opportunity, and to convert this threat into an opportunity and go ahead and extract the maximum out of it. And I'm sure whenever this pandemic ends, a lot of people are going to say, oh, this was an opportunity that we missed. Wish we had utilized better to do this, this, nor we are back to the rut. But let me tell you, irrespective of when it ends, it will end. But universally, the equilibrium at which the world will come would fundamentally be different from what it was in the pre-COVID era. And the trajectory also would be different. And that will also apply to everyone individually, where your life would have gone, and the direction and the pace and the equilibrium, that would be different. And that is something for the better. And I think the planet as a whole and the humanity as a whole needed to slow down a bit and to think of other things which are more dear than money. And this adversity, this pandemic will help us individually as well as collectively to be able to be aware. And in the hindsight, of course, thanks that this happened, we were able to do, of course, with loss of valuable lives, regrettably. But if we are able to learn lessons from environmental aspect, from the balance of family, in terms of slowing down to an optimal pace, I think we would have extracted something positive out of what was otherwise a disaster.
Yeah, again, thanks that you're already telling us what makes the most sense. And how are you personally dealing with it? I remember seeing your son got married just before the pandemic, right?
That's
And
right.
so you were able to have a celebration and so on, which now
We
cannot
were
be
able
done.
to have the celebration. Thankfully, there were 2 or 3, 4 weeks after that when people had, even when they didn't realize the gravity of the situation. But I think, I mean, there are people, my friends, their kids were getting married and so on. So someone was saying, let's postpone. I said, no, please go through the ceremony and so on. Let there not be 50 people, even if there are 10 people allowed. Go to a small gurdwara and get your Anand ceremony over and done with, rather than,
Wait.
trying to procrastinate and wait and so on. So we were lucky we were early. But having said that, had it been in the scenario, I personally would not have been in favor of postponing the thing, and the rites would have been solemnized.
Yeah, and lot of people are feeling distant. What I find interesting and admirable about some people I see like you is that this physical distancing, which has increased, the inability to travel and all, has not slowed down your heart-to-heart distance. In fact, I think the reverse is happening. I see you more connected with people at all levels, whether they're migrant workers, people stuck in different areas, people looking for work or not having food, all the way to your son in San Francisco Bay Area, to me in
Absolutely.
Mexico. And tell us about how your life has changed during the pandemic in terms of how you relate to people.
Well, I think that's a very deep and a philosophical question and would require deep thought. But what I've been saying that when you're talking in terms of a physical interaction, by definition, your capacity to be able to physically interact with people would be limited because, you only have 24 hours and the barriers of geography and distances. I mean, how many times can I travel to San Francisco in 1 year, where my elder son presently is there working with Google? But when you have this kind of obstacle imposed, then instead of saying, oh, in any case, a couple of months later, I am going to be with him, now you would be able to perhaps, take those 10 minutes out and, have one clock which is telling you the Pacific time and the Indian Standard Time. And of course, more bothered about his schedule, that if he's going to have an important meeting on Friday morning, whereas I am done with the week on a Friday evening, that is not the ideal time for me to, start an important conversation with him. So what really this COVID has done is to help you to organize better, to communicate better, more efficiently. And at the end of the day, it is the emotional connect. I mean, as they say, you can be traveling together, but you could be on a same different journey. I mean, two people from Delhi to Baroda in a train or a plane, technically the journey is same, their destination is same, but their overall trajectory is entirely different. So here, so physical distance, of course, does matter. Human being is by nature a social animal, but technology being what it is, a couple of years ago, we could not imagine that this type of communication was possible. I think this is also, I'm kind of almost trying to emphasize that the normal talent works and the anchors and the so-called critics and the experts who thought they had a monopoly over things and the current affairs and so on, just because they had the facility of a news channel, that is going to be broken, and nothing is going to democratize media and press more than the technology available, and that then ultimately acting with people, disseminating and adding your to the universe is all.
And Karanbir ji, since you are well versed with what's happening at the state level and national level, do you feel that education and health, among other sectors, will change given the technology as well as the need of the hour? Do you see that changing in terms of how people will interact, how people will get medication, how people will get education? Do you see that shifting?
That shift is taking place. First of all, it is going to be the priorities. I mean, priorities of the government in terms of investment in the health and education sectors. That is what we see. Otherwise, there were competing demands. Someone would say, I want a bridge here. I want to have a road here rather than a school or a college here. But now I think this thing has hit everyone so hard that everyone would be kind of convinced that investment in health and education is something which should be most priority. In terms of education, also, I think this is going to be a big blow to the American universities, where people would formally go back and be, spending $50,000 per year, even higher, physically present. Or people would be questioning, when I can get a course at $500, why should I be going there? So, how education is delivered, how students is also going to change right from the kindergarten classes. Of course, social interaction, students or young children with each other is very important. But aids, to sum up, the more emphasis in terms of the investment by the public sector and the private sector, and how it is delivered is also going to be important. Normally in India, we would take, health thing for theek ho jayega, goli le lo type of thing. No, will be more cautious, if not paranoid. So things will change and change for the better.
Well, Karanbir ji, I'm a big fan of your short quotes. And there are so many of them, I can't think of which one is the best. Is there any short poem or a short line that you recall and you would like to
No,
share at
not
this
really.
time?
No, no,
Of
frankly, none.
none. Wow.
It's like asking someone who has 10 children, who's your favorite. So it all depends on the context and time.
Yeah. Yeah. In this
Some of them
context,
are hanging with what is happening, and as a civil servant bound by some conduct rules, and one is not in a position. It's very openly out with something which is political. But having said that, is something which is affecting a large number of people, and more disguised form one is able to comment, and if people appreciate that, it gives you happiness.
well, I'm definitely always looking forward towards the next Karan Singh quote on mainly on Facebook, and truly admire and appreciate what you write. Um, yeah, I mean, I can't even think. There are so many of
You a
them.
question, because can I ask you a question, because some
Yes,
of
please. Yes,
your
please.
being in America, having your own startup company and so on, and your kids obviously going to some of the best schools in the USA. So, what's your mission in life now? Why you're here, and what you want to do? And people from particular Punjab, they want to go to Canada and so on. Here are you having done well there, and now back to Baroda. Obviously, your wife was not well, but what's that brings you homewards?
Well, honestly, as you very well know, geography is no longer a restriction to where and how you work. Having said that, about 5 years ago, I felt that I was done with my, survival game completely, as in the need to make money, and there was a strong desire to give back, like what you described about losing your father and this thing. If you remember, we are from the same generation, Karan Biji. So I also finished SSC in 1979. So in those days, education was completely socialized. So my entire education from middle school all the way through high school, all the way through IIT Bombay was completely subsidized by the government, and the remaining money was given by NGOs, charitable institutions. So even today, I feel that tremendous sense of not even obligation, a desire to give back, a desire to serve. So I said, okay, let me give it a shot with a 6 month, 1 year stint. And my wife did that with funding from a major institution. And in my case, I said, let me just freelance and see. I loved it. I've traveled to 20 states in India, including a short, trip through Punjab. I met you for the first time in
Yep,
Chandigarh. Was that 2.5 years ago? And also went
that's right.
to Amritsar Golden Temple. What is it called? Harmandir Sahib. We did Langar
That's
Seva.
right.
It's the world's largest service opportunity, if you will. Even today, during the pandemic, one of the institutions that is doing large scale service on a daily basis, very basic level, basic food security, are the Sikh Gurudwaras around the world, including Harmandir Sahib, which is in Amritsar. So it was genuinely a joy to be able to experience these things. So my selfish motivation was to learn about the culture that I grew up in, and to, if possible, to serve and in ways I could, in small acts. It's not like there is no way to give back what I received. What I received was vidya. What I received was learning, education, wisdom. There's no money price tag I can put on that. So this is a modest way of receiving and sharing what I learned. But actually, what ended up happening was I learned so much about culture and language. So I can say, I can at least mumble in Punjabi, whether it's Sat Sri Akal, what is it called? Ek Onkar, Satnam, Karta Purak, like Vahe Guruji ki Fateh, Vahe Guruji ka Khalsa, to be able to relate to like at least 20 cultures all around India, whether it was in Orissa, singing Rongapati, Rongapati, or it is in Gujarat, singing Morbani Thanagat Kare. So it's been a very joyful experience. So far from the service that I'm providing, I'm getting back um, tremendous lessons in the diverse culture of India. And then I started going around the world, including Mexico, and learning Espanol, and to be able to interact with people. Uh, with understanding the Bible and understanding how that church system works, the Mayans and the Aztec and the Raramuris and all that. Amazing, amazing. So what I'm doing is nothing but enjoying life in a very meaningful way. And along the way, if I can contribute a little bit, I'm happy about it. So did that answer your
So,
short question?
if any person, you answered it beautifully. And the last question from my side, and I think then we'll have to wind up
Yeah.
also, is that if any person, a thinking individual who's impressed by your talk and would like to associate himself with you or take the benefit of your wisdom, so how does he engage? What is the format and the formality in which he can engage to take benefit of your experience, which you so graciously have agreed to share with people?
Well, it's very simple. It's the same question I was going to ask you, which is basically I connect on social media. Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram are my three common ones that I use. Email a little bit, and definitely a little bit of Twitter, but I think it's probably similar for you, isn't it? If people were to ask
That's
you
right.
questions and approach you, Facebook, Instagram also, is that right?
Yeah.
And
Instagram, I'm on Twitter, Facebook,
Twitter, Facebook, and I'm mostly available on social media. Not necessary that I can give an answer overnight or the same day, but I make it a point to connect, and more in English or the languages I know, which are majority of them are languages of India, Hindi, Marathi, Gujarati, and so on. But also with it goes beyond language. It goes even beyond words. To be able to say hi, hundreds of people come and say, Shankar bhai, thank you. And I'm like, namaste, or salam alaikum, or whatever. That joy of being able to acknowledge each other's presence itself is amazing. And I see that in you. I see that you connect with and just communicate little, what do you call it? It's like, just a few flowers in a pool, just giving a few flowers to share. It's almost like that. You find some flowers, you pluck them and
even
share it with your
even if the flower petals, even if you can share a bit of the fragrance, if you have,
fragrance.
if you
Fragrance.
may,
I remember there is a story
even
of
that
Guru
would be
Nanak,
sufficient.
isn't it? Guru Nanak had
That's
traveled
right.
all the way to, was it Saudi Arabia or something like that? And then they said, we don't have space for you. They gave a bowl full of water and said, there's no space. What do you do? And then it, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember is he put a few flowers on top. I said, okay. So I'll be like floating like flowers on top of the bowl.
That's right.
So that's the beauty of it, to be able to learn from different cultures from around the world, to be able to share a little bit, and to be able to, I think, yeah, divisive forces have increased, and we see that everywhere. Divisive forces have increased everywhere, whether it's through religion, whether it is through language, ethnicity, and so on. If we can do a little bit of, in my case, I've learned a little bit of Arabic, a little bit of Chinese, Espanol, to be able to just share mere nothings in a few words, like रूह बनकर जरे जरे में समा जाता हूँ मैं, one of my favorite lines in Urdu. Beautiful, you know what I mean? It's like,
that's right.
I don't even know how to translate these things sometimes. But
it's like a soul I pervade into the smallest of the particles.
Yes, and that's the nature of the divine. That's the nature of us. If we can share through words, through pictures, through this thing, and Karan, that's what I appreciate. You're like a brother to me that has been sharing wisdom. When did you start on social media, by the way? When did you start sharing on social media?
No, it may have been 8 or 9 years, but I think one really more seriously about 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, and it's such a beautiful way of relating to the world in a virtual world with being grounded in reality, being grounded in the physical location and the community we are in, yet being able to share.
And the best compliment which I sometimes get it when my sons come and tell me, they are my biggest critics, when their friends say, "Hey, your dad is putting a lot of cool stuff." So,
Yes,
so because if you're able to write something which is appeals to a 20 years something,
that's
then
amazing.
because those are the millennials who are, for them, um, reputations and this thing and ranks are material, and if they're able to appreciate something, so that's the biggest
Yeah.
compliment which I think
Yeah.
one
I
can
get
get.
that from my children. One of them used to say, "Your cousin writes good stuff on, or he dances well on social media." Oh no, he's not my cousin. He's my dad, and he's. But to be able to appreciate and transcend even age barriers, community
That's right.
barriers,
That's
and
right.
religious barriers, I think it's amazing. And thank you for even sharing that and
That's
asking
it.
those questions. So yes, our
And
time
it's
is up.
been great talking to you, and I'm sure we'll be able to converse soon again. And thanks for your time.
And,
And
and if
we'll be in
anybody
touch.
wants to connect with Karan Beji or with me, we will provide a few links.
Sure.
There are easy ways of, because both of us love the media. And I
Absolutely.
guess you said you'll be retiring within a couple of years or something
One
like
year.
that.
One
So
year. 1 year.
then you'll probably have more time to share and more things to talk
Absolutely.
about more freely.
Absolutely. Hopefully.
I've been in
Hopefully.
this mode for the last 4 years, and so people say, "कि कुछ करता ही नहीं," like the guy has nothing to do, and but that's why you have so much to share. But yes, this is my
Absolutely.
work now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyways, so great talking to you, Shankarji, and we'll be in touch. And
Yeah,
have
namaste,
a
sat sri
great day ahead.
akal,
Namaste, Sat Sri
assalamu
Akal.
alaikum.
Sat Sri Akal. Sat Sri Akal.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.